Welcome to Christian Questions. This is Jonathan and Rick, and our subject this morning is, should it be Israel or Palestine? We have our special guest, Ken Rawson, with us. We are live Sunday mornings from 6 to 8, and to be a part of our program, call 866-985-4255. That's 866-985-4ALL.
All right, thanks, Jonathan. And Ken, before the break, we had talked a little bit about the prophetic significance of Israel being in the land according to the Bible. You were talking about the historic significance of the fact that over 3,600 years there have always been Jews in the land. And one other, rather than you were in the middle of a thought, I guess let's get back to that thought, and then we'll go on to one other aspect.
All right, I mentioned that in A.D. 638, the Arabs did conquer the Holy Land and rule for 50 years, and then intermittently brief periods until 1090 A.D. Now, this is important because Yasser Arafat appeared before the UN in 1981, and he said that the Arabs live continuously a historic culture from 638 A.D. up until the 1881, when the Zionist movement took over Palestine and disrupted the Palestinian culture that had been going on for centuries. Well, that is refuted by the famous Arab historian Khaldun, who observed as late as A.D. 1400 the land was permeated with Jewish culture. He said that over 300 years after Arab rule completely ended, there was still no evidence of Palestinian or Arab roots or an established culture of the Arabs in the Holy Land. Now, James Parks, who was also an historian, in his very exhaustive work, Whose Land, observed that it was not until the Turkish period in A.D. 1517 through 1917 that in the ethnic sense the Holy Land acquired a substantial Arab population. But he observed it was not a majority population. And how did this population come about? Not by natural population growth, but immigration that took place between 1517 to 1917 A.D. And then we have, during the period of the 1700s and 1800s, which we'll probably get to later, that noted travelers observed in the Holy Land that it was a complete wilderness, barren and desolate of population. We get to 1850 A.D.s, and the very famous Arab professor and historian Hidi observed in 1850 there were approximately a total of 200,000 people in Palestine, or the Holy Land, and they were Jews, Arabs, and Christians. And then, without going into details, the Jews started to return to their land in fulfillment of Bible prophecy. Worldwide fund drives were conducted to raise money to establish a Jewish culture and infrastructure, and this created so many jobs that were now available that Arabs just started pouring in to the Holy Land to take advantage of the economic upswing that the Jews have brought to their land by the Jews returning. But both President Roosevelt in 1939 observed, and MacDonald, who was the Prime Minister of England back in the 1920s, they both observed that the large increase of Arab population from the late 1800s and especially from 1918 was due only to the prosperity that the Jews brought into the land and provided jobs. If it wasn't for the Jews coming into the land and providing these jobs through a dynamic infrastructure that they were building, Roosevelt said the Arabs would not be there in the numbers that they are today.
Interesting. Ken, you sound like a walking history book. I like it. It's good to get a very strong historical perspective, and I'm asking you to cover a lot of ground in a very short period of time here. So you've talked about prophetic land rights, if you will, historic land rights. What about legal land rights? So, because history, you can say, well, history changes and things change, and now we're here, and it's different than then. Is there a legal aspect to this as well?
Yes, there is, very definitely. World War I, Turkey entered the war on the side of Germany, the Central Powers. When that happened, Jews and Arabs throughout the world just became ecstatic. Why? Because the Turkish Empire, which was called the Ottoman Empire, controlled the whole Middle East, from India all the way west to the Atlantic Ocean through North Africa. And the Arabs wanted, they were living in the Arab Peninsula, and they have migrated to other parts of North Africa and the Middle East. They wanted independence. They were under Turkish rule. The Jews wanted the Holy Land for their inheritance and their land. Now, we have a area of 1,250,000 square miles involved in the Middle East that the Turkish Empire controlled. The Jews asked for only 3% of this vast area. They ended up, under the Balfour Declaration and the League of Nations, being given less than 1% of this entire area of 1,250,000 square miles. The Arabs were rewarded with 52 independent states in this area. 22, let me back up. Getting a little too enthusiastic.
Overzealous, huh?
Yeah. 22 Arab states in this territory, and the League of Nations granted the Jews 1%, and then this was in 1920. Then in 1922, England lopped off this part of this 1% and set up a new Arab emirate, which is now the state of Jordan on the east side of the Jordan River. Now let's just analyze this. Why did the League of Nations grant potential a Jewish potential state in the Holy Land? Well, they were dividing up the Middle East, and they passed the law that Britain would have a mandate to prepare the Holy Land, which was called Palestine at that time. And now let's briefly get back to why it was called Palestine.
Okay.
In